Tonight, the emotional words of the young boy and sole survivor of a hit-and-run attack on a Muslim family. Descriptions of deep sorrow and debilitating pain in an Ontario courtroom.
Extended cousins expressing, serious trauma associated with this event, and especially when they're so young.
In the sentencing of a murderer.
This is more than a human heart should be asked to bear.
Another child dies from flu complications as cases surge. In New York State, a bus from Canada rolls over in a deadly crash. Plus, the alleged extortion scheme burning new homes. And inside a rescue mission in the remote north.
We made our way to the wreckage where 4 were still in it.
The team that jumped out of a plane to rescue people from a plane crash.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. More than 2 years after Nathaniel Veltman carried out a deadly vehicle attack on a Muslim family in London, Ontario, we're hearing for the first time from the sole survivor of the tragedy. The now 11-year-old orphan was the last of a series of friends and relatives who shared their grief and fear at the sentencing hearing. CTV's Michelle Maluski reports.
The extended members of the Afzaal family entered London's courthouse Friday for the final day of victim impact statements, their chance to tell the judge just how much their world has changed since June 6, 2021. The final victim impact statement was that of the lone survivor to this tragedy, a boy who suffered a broken leg and collarbone. He was only 9 at the time. Because of this offense, I will have to learn how to walk again. The youngest Afzaal talked about all the things he's going to miss out on now, like the enjoyment of family gatherings, and his own children won't have grandparents. He concluded his honest statement with a reminder to youngsters to not take their parents' discipline or sibling rivalry for granted. When they leave you, you would love to fight with them one last time. 3 generations of this family were killed. Grandmother Talat, her son Salman, his wife Madiha, and their 15-year-old daughter Yumna. Friday, Yumna's best friends took the stand and painted a picture of anger, regret, and sorrow. The thought of my family being targeted, hunted in the streets, mowed down, and killed just because of her Muslim faith was very debilitating, Miriam Al-Sabawi told the court in an impactful 11-minute statement. He took from us what did not belong to him, and there is no way to give it back. All of it taken because of hate that was left unchecked. Hate that was given endless opportunities to grow, she said. Nathaniel Veltman, now 23, is a self-described white nationalist who told police he hit the family while they walked down a London street because of the clothes they were wearing, because he could tell they were Muslim. For 2 days and over 68 statements, Veltman sat barely moving, listening to the impact of his actions. Michelle Maluski, CTV News.
Police in Edmonton have made multiple arrests following a string of arsons allegedly tied to a large-scale extortion scheme. It appears the city's South Asian business community is being targeted. CTV's Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier now on the issue, sweeping across Canadian cities.
In just the last 2 months, at least 9 brand new Edmonton homes and houses still under construction have gone up in flames, suspected arsons.
It's concerning for me that residents are feeling unsafe.
Police believe the fires are part of an extortion scheme targeting members of Edmonton's South Asian community who own home construction companies. They've received threats with demands for money. Some haven't paid and have seen projects go up in flames. This man, familiar with the situation, has asked for his identity to be hidden.
Every builder has hired dozens of security guards to protect their properties and protect themselves.
A dedicated police team has arrested and charged 6 people aged 18 to 20, and they're still looking for this man called a person of interest.
It's a frightening situation. It's just another emerging way to try and get money out of innocent people.
Police agencies in Metro Vancouver are looking into a series of similar crimes involving fires and shootings.
More and more people are coming forward saying they have received letters or threats of similar nature.
And authorities in Brampton, Ontario have also seen a rise in extortion, which they have linked to the crimes in BC.
Because it's not just the business owners. It's, you know, they're concerned for families. There's a concern amongst the community. It's creating some anxiety.
The politicians have to look at this as a priority.
This Abbotsford City Councillor, a former police chief and BC Solicitor General, is calling for a coordinated national investigation.
If we don't have law enforcement working together, creating these specialized task force to go after these particular individuals, they'll be emboldened.
And investigators believe there may be more victims too scared to report the crimes. Edmonton police are asking anyone who has received threats or anyone with information to come forward. Heather.
Bill, thank you. One person is dead, several others injured after a tour bus from Canada rolled over this afternoon in New York State.
Oh my gosh, it's a whole bus.
Passengers en route from Montreal to Midtown Manhattan were seen waiting for help after their bus crashed off a highway in the southern Adirondacks.
Multiple subjects trapped under the bus.
One person was killed, another airlifted to a medical center in critical condition. 11 people were also treated for minor injuries. 23 people were on board, including the bus driver.
We're going to make sure that they have somewhere safe and warm to go tonight, they have food, and help them connect with their friends and family.
A major winter storm moving through the U.S. and Canada is expected to wallop the East Coast this weekend, leaving millions under winter weather alerts. Significant snowfall is expected for some areas, making travel treacherous and forcing many closures. CTV's Garrett Barry on those braving the elements.
A great day to work on a slide.
Because you go flying.
Or a skating stride. A beautiful morning in St. John's for a long hike about.
We're after walking all over town, down east, down south.
3 hours.
Yeah.
Is that right?
And we had lunch along the way.
And for parents, a little bit more time to spend with their kids.
We only get a few of these a year, and said the kids only seem to enjoy it, at least at this age.
For some, this Friday storm was perfectly timed, nice enough to get out during the day, bad enough to cozy up at night.
Watch a movie with them tips.
The city of St. John says they're throwing everything they have at this storm, and it seems like snow is hitting just about everywhere. While California spent the day digging out, Arkansas got a messy mix of snow and rain, and winter weather is expected to hit New York and New England this weekend. And in Winslow, Arkansas, snow and ice caused traffic backups. The poor conditions led to long delays over an hour for some drivers in the state's Bobby Hopper Tunnel.
I always drive with Google Maps, even though I know where I'm going. And just for this type of situation, and it suggested that I get off at the Chester exit and get on 71. And at the last minute, I said, you know what? I think I'll be okay. Well, I chose poorly. I was wrong.
Here in St. John's, the snow is expected to continue overnight. It looks like some 25 centimeters or so will fall by the time this is all said and done. Some facilities are announcing delayed openings for tomorrow. Heather?
A winter weekend ahead, Garrett, thank you. And with so many affected by snowstorms in the coming days, CTV Atlantic's chief meteorologist, Kaylin Mitchell, is here to help us understand this weather pattern. Kaylin.
Thank you, Heather. Well, eastern areas of Newfoundland, specifically the Avalon Peninsula, being impacted by a coastal storm that mostly avoided the maritime region. Snow continues to fall and accumulate around eastern parts of that province, but improved weather conditions are expected by Saturday morning as the snow becomes lighter, comes to an end, and the winds ease up. Now, that being said, all in all, there's likely to be parts of the Avalon Peninsula that'll pick up 20 to 30 centimeters of snow, with snowfall amounts becoming lower, moving further west into Newfoundland. After that, the next system to watch for will be making its way up the eastern seaboard of the United States on Saturday, eventually moving towards Cape Cod. And then it's about how close it gets to the southwest of Nova Scotia, because the closer it gets, the more snow that province could see. Now, right now, it looks like the best chance of seeing some snowfall amounts that'll be in the range of 10 to 20 centimeters will be around the south shore of Nova Scotia, with Halifax on the northern edge of that heavier snow. Heather.
All right, Kaylin, thank you. When flu season strikes, it affects thousands and can even be fatal. That tragic outcome playing out in BC again as the province reports a third child has died because of flu-related complications. As CTV's Kamal Karamali reports, medical experts want parents to be on the lookout for certain symptoms.
It was the final week of 2023 when the BC Centre for Disease Control got report of a child under the age of 10 dying because of complications from the flu, the third child to die in less than a month.
Influenza, was identified as a potential contributing factor, but it might not have necessarily been the cause of death.
Early indications show all three died from a secondary bacterial infection. Deaths among children are rare, but happen every year.
We're talking about probably single digits or low double digits across the country every year.
One of those children, Jill Promely's son, Jude McGee. The 2-year-old woke up one morning in the spring of 2016 with a low-grade fever. He died that same day.
We're coming up on Thomas and Jude's 10th birthday, and Thomas will turn 10 and Jude won't. He only ever got to have 2.
This mother now launching a vaccination campaign.
It's tough because, there are things that we can do to help better protect our communities. And I think that there is work that we need to be doing to look after each other.
Doctors warn influenza cases are surging across the country.
My feeling right now is that we're in the midst of a fairly, moderately severe influenza season that is affecting children perhaps a little bit disproportionately.
Pediatricians asking parents to keep a lookout for a persistent fever, if your child isn't able to keep liquids down, is really drowsy, or has trouble breathing.
I think all of that should warrant a call to a healthcare provider to find out if more needs to be done.
Pediatricians say this year the flu vaccine closely matches the strains currently circulating, so a good idea to get the shot as flu and RSV cases continue to rise. Heather.
Kamal Karamali in Toronto tonight. Thank you. And a major decision south of the border today is raising concerns it could strain Canada's drug supply. The FDA has given the green light for Florida to import certain drugs from this country.
People look to Canada, and we just don't have the drug supply that exists here for Canadians for a market that's essentially 10 times our size.
Florida is the first state to be granted authorization to buy medications in bulk from Canadian wholesalers. Major regulatory hurdles still remain, though, before this becomes a done deal. The Canadian labour market remains sluggish as we start the new year. Only 100 new jobs were added in December, but that's not the whole story. There was actually a loss of over 23,000 full-time jobs, which was offset by a gain of over 23,000 part-time jobs. BNN Bloomberg's Tara Weber breaks it all down for us. Tara.
Heather, the addition of 100 jobs in December was well below what was expected. Analysts had been forecasting a gain of 15,000 jobs. And so the lackluster showing comes after we saw a surge in November of 25,000 jobs. All of these numbers are confirming that there was, in fact, a slowdown in the Canadian economy at the end of last year, with the unemployment rate holding steady at 5.8%. And the meager job gains were led by professional, scientific, and technical services, as well as in healthcare and social assistance. On the other hand, the biggest job losses came in the wholesale and retail sectors. So big picture, the weakening labour market is increasing the likelihood that the Bank of Canada will move to cut interest rates at its next scheduled decision coming up in April. These employment numbers are a key economic data point that the central bank is watching very closely as it works to rein in inflation. However, there is still one factor that could complicate the Bank of Canada moving to ease rates too soon, and that's the strong wage growth that we saw in December. That can further feed inflation. So average hourly wage growth accelerated 5.4%. And that's an issue because the central bank has already said that wage growth above 4% is a concern unless there's also a significant jump seen in labor productivity. Heather?
Thanks, Tara. 40 years after 2 New Brunswick men were wrongfully convicted of murder, there is a rare apology tonight. Walter Gillespie and Robert Mailman walked free yesterday, exonerated after serving years in prison. The top judge of the Court of King's Bench said the justice system failed the men. Tracy DeWare added they have been deprived of decades of their liberty and shrouded by the shame of a murder conviction. Oscar Pistorius, the South African Paralympic runner convicted of killing his girlfriend, is a free man tonight. Pistorius was released from prison today, having served 9 years of his murder sentence for shooting Riva Steenkamp in his home, claiming he mistook her for an intruder. He still has some parole conditions, though, including a curfew, no alcohol, and no media interviews. In the Middle East, Israel is outlining its plan for Gaza's future, saying it'll eventually be governed by Palestinians again, just not Hamas. And while fighting rages on, there's a renewed diplomatic effort. The U.S. Secretary of State arrived in the region tonight for talks with both Israeli and Palestinian leaders. Coming up, prioritizing passengers.
The reality is Canada has fallen far behind other countries when it comes to passenger rail.
The mission to make train travel more convenient. And a first look at a dramatic rescue. For the second time in 4 months, a plane transporting Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has broken down on an international trip. This time he was on a family vacation in Jamaica. The Department of National Defense said a maintenance team and aircraft were dispatched to conduct repairs and as backup, but he was able to return on the original plane. Trudeau's flight was grounded in India for 2 days during the G20 summit in September. Traveling across this country comes with its own challenges, and now there's a push in Parliament to give passengers riding the rails priority over cargo. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on those looking to make Canada's web of rail lines more accessible.
On Canada's vast network of rail lines, freight trains have the priority, but soon passengers could have that right instead.
They oftentimes will just punt a via train out of the way in order to make up for a delay somewhere else in the network so that they can keep to that schedule.
Via Rail operates on 12,000 kilometers of track, but it owns just 3%. CN owns 83% of the lines and takes priority, as does Canadian Pacific and Metrolinx, which runs Toronto's GO Transit.
We had to pull over dozens of times to let freight trains pass by.
The NDP's transport critic traveled from Toronto to Vancouver this Christmas, a journey that took a day longer than it would have 50 years ago. Taylor Backrath said that's because passenger trains have to halt and give way to freight trains, a fact his new private members bill aims to change.
It's a very simple bill. It's just a couple lines in the Canadian Transportation Act, and it simply says that passenger rail providers will have priority on shared tracks in Canada.
Decades ago, the U.S. government passed a law giving its national rail Amtrak priority, and Via Rail wants to see something similar.
We don't own the infrastructure, so we have very few levers that we can use.
But experts in the freight industry say that kind of law in Canada, where the rail network is much smaller, threatens the supply chain.
In the U.S., if you look at their rail system, it's like someone took a bowl of spaghetti and threw it on the floor. So there's a lot of alternatives. There's lots of other alternate routing, and you can get through. So it's not exactly the same situation.
CN says proposals like this need to be carefully considered to ensure goods get to market safe and efficiently. The railway says dedicated lines for passenger trains are needed, but that could cost billions. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
Still ahead, soaring above the competition. The feathery finalist ruling the roost as Regina's official bird. On this National Bird Day, the city of Regina announced its new official feathered friend. The black-capped chickadee has been crowned the city's top bird. There were 6 finalists and more than 21,000 votes flew in for the contest. Regina now shares the avian ambassador with Calgary, which announced the chickadee in 2022. And music fans in Britain now have something that will spice up the mail. The iconic female pop group Spice Girls celebrated their 30th anniversary today with a stamp collection from Royal Mail. The band is only the 6th music group to be featured in a dedicated stamp issue by the Postal Service. The collection will go on sale next week. Fans are tonight remembering one half of the popular crime-fighting duo Starsky and Hutch. Actor David Soul has died.
That's fast. Look, I think you better jump. Don't be funny. Look, jump. You've been killed. You jump. I'm driving. You jump. I'll drive. You jump.
David Soul was propelled to stardom as Detective Ken Hutchinson in the popular TV series from the 1970s that was remade into a film decades later. Soul started off as a folk singer before he found fame in acting. His wife said he died surrounded by family after a valiant battle for life on Thursday. Soul was 80. After the break, a daring rescue in treacherous conditions inside the risky mission to a plane crash in the north. We're finishing tonight with an incredible first look at a mission to rescue 10 people from a plane crash in the Northwest Territories. A crew from Winnipeg was called in to help after the Twin Otter went down last week. CTV's Danton Unger on the critical assignment to bring people to safety.
With flares lighting up the sky, Sergeant Vincent Sebenois and 2 other Royal Canadian Air Force search and rescue crew jumped from the Hercules aircraft.
That's what we see. Rock, ice, snow and wind, and a plane.
This all part of a rescue mission responding to a plane crash in the Northwest Territories on December 27th. A privately chartered Air Tindy flight carrying 8 passengers and 2 crew members crashed about 16 kilometers southeast of the Diavec Diamond Mine. The crash left 6 people with minor injuries and 2 with more serious injuries. An RCAF search and rescue crew from 17 Wing in Winnipeg was called in for the rescue, parachuting into the crash site from about 2,000 feet in the dark with 70 km/h winds.
That's what we do when we train on a regular day, except that this time the consequences were higher.
Once on the ground, Sebenois says the team made their way to the wreckage.
I think everybody was quite relieved to have help, and I can see that. You're quite lonely up there in the Arctic.
They spent the next 14 hours in these tents overnight, providing care for the injured and sheltering from the blizzard conditions.
It was a long night. However, we exchanged a lot of stories, and all the patients there were really good people, and we were able to talk to them all night and care for them.
The next morning, Sebenois says 3 helicopters came to pick up the group.
I would say for me, just proud to be part of that mission.
Captain Jason Shaw, the aircraft commander for the mission, says they train extensively for situations like this, so when the call comes, they're ready to go.
It's fairly rare when we're able to be in a position at an actual plane crash and dispatch the SARTECs and really affect a rescue like that. So it was definitely a good outcome.
Now, more than a week since the rescue, Sebenois says he still thinks about that mission.
We'll remember that for the rest of our life.
Danton Unger, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Now that is a story to tell. That's our newscast for this Friday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.